I'm editing this video, or at least I'm trying to. I'm moving these files over to my editing software, but these are huge, and so far it's building proxies for them. And we've done 4 of 12 so far. This is going to take a minute. While that video is getting ready to edit, some thoughts. I was listening to something on NPR, at least I'm pretty sure it's NPR. I wish I could find it again. I tried to find exactly what it was that I was listening to on the radio, but I haven't been able to find it. It was a discussion about ghosts and the proof of ghosts, the evidence that ghosts exist, ghosts throughout history and what they have meant to people. And there was a guest who said something to the effect that the proof of ghosts is not like a scientific endeavor, because what it's really about is the meaning that they have to the people who believe. And that meaning is the real evidence that we should look for the evidence of ghosts. And my thought was, that is the biggest cop-out crock of shit that I've ever heard. If you want to believe in ghosts because it gives you some kind of meaning or gives you some kind of satisfaction, believing that some loved one is still walking the earth in spirit, I can understand that. But these ghost hunters out there, these paranormal investigators with their cameras and their heat sensing equipment and their infrared and their recorders and all of this, they're not out there with personal meaning detectors. They are out there trying to show that ghosts in fact exist, the same way that electromagnetic energy exists, the same way that I exist now and can speak to you on this camera. That's what they're trying to do, and that, as flawed as it may be, is a scientific endeavor. It's a scientific endeavor, but it's gone about in an unscientific way. They are trying to get some kind of tangible evidence that ghosts really, for real, exist as a phenomenon that is measurable, that can be shown even to somebody who doesn't already believe it. And I actually think that is a worthwhile endeavor. If there's anything there, if there's anything to be discovered, then discovering it would be a revolution. But unfortunately, it's not gone about in a real scientific way, which is why we don't have scientific peer-reviewed articles describing in mathematical terms the evidence and the measurement of ghosts. It's just not there. And the way people go about trying to show that ghosts exist, it's not going to be there. Full disclosure, I have been ghost hunting before, and I enjoyed it, would do it again. Do I believe in ghosts? No. Did I find any ghosts? Of course not. But that doesn't really matter. It's still a lot of fun. It's something you can do with a group, or it's something you can do by yourself. I think it's more fun with a group. You get to go to unusual places and see unusual things. You won't find ghosts, but what you will find is a bit of adventure, and that's fun. The problem with hunting ghosts and trying to find real evidence of ghosts is that the premises that are used by those trying to do it, they don't always make a lot of sense. There's a lot of talk of energy without a real description of what their energy really means. Energy, of course, in the sense that it's used in science, doesn't have the same meaning that they seem to imbue it with. It doesn't seem to be measured in any way that could be useful for scientific purposes. It's just energy, and it does these things. And I mean, what is it? Is it some new force in the universe? How do you measure it? What's it made of, or how can it be detected through its interaction with the physical world? That's what we do with other forms of energy, with other forces. Even if we can't see it, we can still measure it in how it interacts with the world. But how does the energy that's used in paranormal investigating work? How exactly does it work? It's hard to say even what a ghost really is. A ghost is supposed to be a spirit. What is a spirit exactly? Well, we have descriptions of spirits from religious texts, but those are textual descriptions. What is it? What is it described in ways that can be measured? That's not very easy. We seem to think that a spirit is a person that doesn't have a body. The body has passed away, the body is gone. But the personality, the thought patterns of the person somehow go on in some intangible form. But if it's really intangible, that's a problem. An intangible form like that, if we would expect it to be able to walk through walls, to fade in and out of not necessarily existence, but fade in and out of our ability to perceive them. But if that's the case, for instance, if a spirit can walk through this wall right here, if the spirit is unencumbered by solid physical objects, then why would it be encumbered by things like the floor and earth and the atmosphere? This is not a trite point, I promise, because if a spirit is actually intangible and can't be stopped by a physical object and pass through physical objects, well, the earth is spinning. The earth is rotating around the sun. The sun is moving relative to the galaxy, and the galaxy is moving relative to the universe. So any object that doesn't interact with physical things, any object that can pass through a physical matter, would be off in space somewhere. It couldn't be anchored to a place like a haunted house or some object that had meaning to that person in life. Unless there's some other thing at work, but then you have to describe that. Then you have to figure out how that works. Or the spirit is something that doesn't walk through walls. It would be blocked by this wall. It would be blocked by the floor, so it's not passing through the center of the earth as the earth moves, or flying off into space, so gravity must have some effect on it. Okay, if that's the case, then it's something that interacts with the physical world, so we should be able to measure it. Even if we can't see it, we should still be able to measure how it interacts with the physical world. And ghosts somehow elude that form of measurement. Paranormal investigators still pay some lip service, at least, to the scientific method, and there are some methods of measuring ghost energy that have kind of gone by the wayside. Even mainstream paranormal investigators have discarded some methods that seem to obviously give false results. One example that I think of is orbs. If you watch a lot of these paranormal shows, or look at what investigators have come up with privately through YouTube videos or elsewhere, at least in the past, a lot of credence has been given to orbs these objects, these round objects that show up in video, on film, on cameras, floating around. That's supposed to be some kind of spiritual energy and some kind of indication that there may be a ghost nearby. All of this stuff, which it's invisible to the naked eye, but shows up on camera. It shows up on camera because the light source from the camera or a light source nearby, be it visible light or infrared light, reflects off of dust or insects that's in the air all the time and shows up as orbs on camera. And it's obviously not ghosts. And the idea of orbs as spiritual phenomena, I think, is kind of passé now. I think most paranormal investigators have discarded that particular method of capturing evidence of a ghost, which is good because that's ridiculous. That's not ghost. It's just stuff. It's stuff that shows up on camera that you can't see because the camera sees things differently than you do. The camera sees light reflected off of small particles differently than your human eye does. So it shows up. Yeah, but it's not ghosts. And that's good. It's good to discard bad methods. The problem is a lot of the methods that they continue to use are still pretty bad. Back when I was having fun ghost hunting, not finding ghosts, but ghost hunting, and looking for other groups that I might go ghost hunting with, I did find a local group run by a really nice lady. She seemed very nice. She had a little podcast that she did. It was a small thing, but I listened to a bit of it just because I wanted to know a little bit more of what it's about and if this may be a group that I might have fun going out with and having a good time. Well, she had this podcast on. She had guests on, and one of her points was that to investigate ghosts, you shouldn't need all this equipment. You shouldn't need, the thermal cameras and the infrared cameras and the recorders and all that stuff. That's all TV stuff. It's a bit of gatekeeping to think that you have to buy equipment in order to investigate the paranormal, and that the experience that you have is what is the true measure of the evidence that you find. And yeah, I get that. I understand that. You shouldn't have to buy a bunch of shit to have fun going out and looking for ghosts. I do kind of understand that. But there's a problem with relying on human experience for something like that. Human experience is not reliable at all. Our brains are evolved from a time when we lived in a hostile environment, in a time where we needed to know what that sound was in the dark. We needed to protect ourselves from something that could attack us at night or from some hidden place. So our brains evolved to alert on unexpected noises or unexpected movement in the dark. We came to feel alarmed, scared, frightened at things that we don't have an explanation for, because in the past that could have been a predator out there, and our fight or flight instinct needed to click on to protect us in order to survive. What that means, though, is that if we're in the dark, or if we're in a place that we don't know or not familiar with, and there could be something around the corner that we're not aware of, Or if we're in a place where we are familiar, but we hear a sound that we can't explain, that's unfamiliar to us, then our brains still click on into that fight or flight mode. Another thing to keep in mind is that what we see and what we hear is not raw data from our eyes and from our ears. Our brains take the information that comes from our senses and models it in a way that we can understand it and make sense of it. But it's what our brains model from that information that we actually perceive. So, as strange as it may seem, what we see and what we hear is actually experienced up here, not here and here. And there are some consequences to that. Our brains are kind of hardwired to recognize faces, to see patterns in things, and to see faces, because that's, again, important, because we need to recognize other people. We need to recognize other human beings. We also need to recognize a predator when we see one. So we need to recognize faces, and we're really good at seeing faces in what might otherwise seem to be random patterns. We can see faces in 2 dots and a curve. That can be a face for us. But what that means is when we're in the dark, when there's very little light coming in, our brains want to know what the hell is out there. And if there's any kind of pattern out there, anything out in the dim distance that could be perceived as another person, our brain will interpret it as a person. And the same with sound. We can interpret sounds as voices. We can interpret sounds as words, even if they're not. Our brains will take the small amount of information that's coming in and try to make sense of it. But that's why human experience is not very reliable if you're wanting to find out what's actually there. I mentioned before, if you want to believe in ghosts because it gives you some kind of personal meaning, I don't have an issue with that. I know a lot of people do. It's almost mainstream now to believe in ghosts. If it gives you some kind of solace to believe that your dead grandma still lives in the house and is watching over you, there's not necessarily any harm in that. But that doesn't mean there can't be harm in it, because there are people out there right now who would be very happy to take advantage of your belief and lie to you about the condition of your dead grandma's everlasting soul in order to move money from your pocket into theirs. I don't personally find any meaning in the belief in the afterlife, whether it's a spirit going up off into some ethereal plane, or a spirit walking around roaming the earth and haunting houses and such. I don't get any special meaning out of any of that. In some ways I wish that I could, because it's very comforting to think that after we die, some part of us goes on. After all, we are so important. How can we just stop existing when our body dies? We're too important for that. We have too much meaning to ourselves to simply disappear. But I don't see any good reason to believe that. There are reasons, sure. They're just not good reasons. There's no good reason, as far as I can tell, to believe that we do carry on. And that kind of sucks, because that means when we lose someone, we really lose them forever. They're not coming back. They don't. exist somewhere out there, watching over us. They don't carry on. They're just gone. What that should mean to us, I think, is that if we want to experience time with someone, if we want to appreciate someone, if we love someone, we need to spend the time with them now, while they're still here. We don't have a chance to do it all again someday by and by after we shuffle off this mortal coil. What I have found, though, at least in my family, is that, and we've had funerals recently, is that they believe that our relative that has passed away is in a better place, that they've gone up to heaven to see their lost relatives and loved ones and to live in eternal comfort. They believe that, but they act as though it's not true. They act like it is a loss. So it's like they believe it, but they don't believe it. I can't find any comfort personally in believing something or pretending to believe something that in fact I'm pretty sure is false. I get no comfort in that. If you do, though, I am not going to try to change your mind. Look, I went through this process of letting go of a lot of old beliefs that upon closer examination I determined were probably not true. I went through that. I've gone through that more than once. And it's hard. It can be traumatic. It means that if you're going to live a life with some kind of optimism, some kind of belief in a better future, and if you're not going to descend into nihilism, that you have to build some other belief system based on things that at least have a possibility of actually being true. And that is hard. That is painful. Not to mention the fact that if you are in a culture where everyone believes the thing that is probably not true, that can mean family is alienated. It can mean a loss of friends. It can mean consequences in your everyday life, in employment, in in just interacting with people. It will probably mean a lifetime of passive aggressive or even aggressive attempts to push you back toward that belief that you gave up. So if you genuinely believe the thing that I don't believe, I'm not going to try to dissuade you. And if you are holding on to those beliefs despite acknowledging that the evidence for those beliefs is faulty or scant or just not there, but you're holding on to those beliefs because you need them in some way, or you're just not ready to go through the personal turmoil of letting them go and dealing with those consequences, I can't blame you. I can't blame anyone who chooses to not go through that. It sucks. Eventually, sometimes you can find community with people who have also shed those beliefs, but sometimes that is not much of a comfort. You have a community whose only common element is not believing in something. That's not very much to hold a community together, and unfortunately it means that you often get a lot of people in that community who have replaced those beliefs with other dogma that can be vile. So I don't believe in ghosts, but I kind of do believe in ghost hunting. I believe in spending time with friends, having adventures, doing fun and unusual things that are otherwise harmless. I believe in doing things to enrich life, even if it's something meaningless. It can still have meaning to you. And yeah, I encourage everyone to go ghost hunting just for the hell of it. You won't find any ghosts, but you might still get scared. You might be spooked. You might still have a story to tell. And that's something that could give life a little bit more meaning. Merry Easter, everyone. I'm going to edit video now.